So to keep things simple, I'm gonna follow up this community post. Um, our Synchro community, I have a post for this under the wiki, Synchro 4D products, Synchro 4D Power BI data connector, which kind of walks you to how to get started and provide some templates to make your life easier. I put the link for the communities on the chat here. Uh, I'll keep on updating this post. So to get the latest, greatest information, you can actually go down to the bottom and um, turn on page notifications. So anything does get updated, you will get an email notification on it. For that, you'll have to be signed in using your Bentley IMS. But yeah, you'll at least be on the latest know-how of this. So first things, prerequisites, we'll need to install Power BI Desktop. As I said, it's a free tool, so you can install that. And second, you'll need access to the connector file. Now, this connector file we developed, it accesses all the Synchro 4D Pro information and inputs that into Power BI. So you'll need to install this connector in this specific folder location. If you don't already have this location under Documents, Power BI Desktop Custom Connectors, you can just create this folder and put that in there. So all you have to do is just copy this address onto your folder browser, the address bar, put that there, and it will take you to this location. Otherwise, you can just come back one step and create the folder location and copy paste this .mez file. So that's the first step of getting started. Second, you'll have to enable reading of these tertiary extensions, MEZ files in Power BI directly. So this is I opened up Power BI. I have to go to File, Options and Settings, Options. Under Security, we'll have to enable this option, the not recommended option, to allow any extensions to load without validation or warning. So once you have this enabled and the MEZ file installed, now you can start connecting to your 4D Pro data by going to Get Data here in the Home tab, More. And you can see here the kind of data it can deal with: Excel, XMLs, JSONs, Oracle SQLs, as all that stuff. So here I'm going to search for 4D Pros. Oh, just 4D, Synchro 4D. I guess this is under online services. So I'm going to click on this, connect. All right, so the main input is it's requiring is for a project ID. Now this connector only works for any Synchro project that is uh, uploaded to Synchro Control. Assuming everybody knows what Synchro Control is, you can access that through construction.bentley.com. So this is a sample civil project I have. So if I go to administration, manage iModel, you can see I have one of the iModels set up as a 4D Pro. Regardless of how this iModel is created, whether if it's an SP seeded iModel where you upload the SP file and create the iModel, or is the iModel is created using Admin connector, as long as you have a 4D iModel, the connector can read all the 4D Pro information from that iModel. So my requirement was project ID. The project ID is the URL. This is the fastest way of accessing it. But if you want something more thorough, you can always go to administration, manage product details. This is your project ID, which you can copy from here. So first, I would need the project ID. And second, I would need certain permissions to be able to access this. As I keep scrolling down my wiki here, it says Synchro control permissions. You'll need access to control, be able to read the iModel properties, and have at least read access to the schedule as a minimum. And also, there are to be able to access user field data. This is kind of an update. If you have already used this connector before, the latest update was we enabled to read of user field data. So for that, you'll have to go to your manage iModel again, edit, and there are these new settings, Synchro sync settings, where you can process iModel properties. I just recommend turning all of these process properties and user field options to get the maximum out of the data connector. Right, so once we have all of that set up, we have a project, we have our control permissions, we have user fields enabled. All I have to do is copy that project ID, press OK. Right, this is going to go through our Bentley IMS authentication service. So I'm going to sign in. And while you're working in the project, this might pop up more times than you would like to see this, just because the tokens expires and you'll have to re-sign in. If you're continuously using it, doesn't matter if you leave it for some time, it will show up to re-sign in. It's not a big deal, so I'm gonna connect. All right, so you can see this is all the tables that the 4D Pro connector can read from our project. We have, this will probably make sense to most of you guys if you have been using 4D Pro. So I can download stuff like resource groups, resource status, um, task information, task statuses, and so on. So you can pick and choose which tables you need. You can just download all the tables if you want. For this example, I'm just gonna keep it simple. I'm gonna download the resource table, the task table. You can see we have user field tables as well. So these are the core tables where you have the information of literally all the resource or all the tasks, but there are some additional tables that helps you define relationship between these tables. So right now, I have a list of tasks, right? But and I have a list of resources, but there's nothing in these tables that is saying that which resources are actually assigned to which task. So that kind of relationship is defined by these secondary tables. For example, um, let's scroll down here, task to resource, this one. So this just says this table defines the relationship between which task is connected with which resource. And all this table contains is the GUID, the unique identifier of the task and the resource. So there might be multiple tasks, a single task GUID with multiple resources and so on. So similar tables like this one, task user field value. So I have a table for user field, this one, and then I have a table for task user field value, and that's how I make those connections. So just sticking with the resource as an example, I'm loading resource, task, and task to resource tables. You can see a preview here, but I'm gonna click on load or transform data. Let's click on load here first. Depending on the project size, the number of tasks, resources, user fields you have, this can take some time to load. This is a pretty smallish, I don't know if you saw, there's like 40,000 resource entities. So it's a small project, so it goes fast enough, but this can take some time. All right, so this is right now I'm in the report view. This is where I build my report and put my graphs here. On the right, at the rightmost section, there's a data, and these are the tables I downloaded. Each table has bunch of columns. If you want to see what those columns and values are, I can go to this data view on the left. And if I select my task, now you can see I'm downloading the task grid. This is directly connected to my grid in 4D Pro. Percentage complete, duration, start finish dates, the name, ID, uh, physical quantities, and so on. So it's getting a lot of properties. Right now, there is a few limitation. We don't have any baseline information coming in. We don't have cost information coming in, but there are methods to get that information in. But right now, these are the limitations of the properties that you directly can import that in. So and so on. If I select on my resource table, you can see list of resources, their type, what the parent tree hierarchy is, and so on. So, to create a graph, it's a matter of dragging, dropping the columns onto my visuals. So let's say I want to see task. So I'm gonna drag drop the ID column right here. And by default, it just created a visual, a table visual. So it's showing me data in a table form. Maybe I want to show this visual in a, um column chart. So I can select that and it will show me a column. Right now, it's the column needs an X and Y axis. So it doesn't really do me any good, but I can change this to a card visual. And this is showing me the first ID. So this is a card visual, which just shows the number, and the field that has been dropped to this visual is the ID, right? So by default, since it can only show one value, it showed me the first ID, but I can change its aggregation to the last total count. So let's say I want to see the count of tasks. So this is my count of total task here. Maybe I want to see a count of resources. So I can maybe um, open up a card visual here. In my resource, I can go to resource ID, drag it to the fields, and every visual will have multiple fields depending on the kind of visual. And this is my count of um, resources, right? So what I want to see as a base is maybe I want to see task IDs, and I want to see which all resources are assigned to the same task. So maybe I'm going to drop the resource ID on a different table. So I have two different forms. Now, if I, within a visual page, if I select a data, it's going to filter out all the data on the whole report. So let's say I want to select this task ID. So ideally, it should show me the resources that are assigned to this task. But right now, it's just showing me the raw list of all the IDs because I haven't really defined any relationship between my resource and the task, which is defined in this uh, table, task to resource table. So those kind of relationships you define using your model view. In the model view, I have all these tables listed. I can create multiple views and start drag and dropping tables that I need to create relationships between. But how this would work is, again, I'm trying not to go into the weeds of this, but just a basic understanding of how Power BI is working. So I have a task table, I have a resource table, and I have a table that is defining which task, which resource is assigned to which task. So all I'm going to do is drag drop the task grid, which is the grid of my task, to this one. And similarly, the resource grid is grid, right? So this is a resource, it's grid. I'm going to drag it towards this. So now I have some sort of a connection defined between these two things, entities. You can see the relationship using the managed relationship icon over here, and I have a relationship between resource, task to resource, and task. So once I start creating these kind of relationships, then my reports know what's happening. So if I click on ID, now you can see there's no ID, there's no resource assigned to this one. Let's go it the other way around. The other way around doesn't work here, but uh, one way I can check whether this relationship worked was I can drag drop the resource ID directly in this table so that it shows up as a column. And there we go. All right, so this ID, task ID 1380 has all of these resources assigned to it. So I can see that kind of relationship. Let's say instead of putting it as a table, so I'm going to remove my resource here. I want to see count of ID assigned to was 1380, I believe. All right, this one, let's say. So I can see for that selected task, I have 13 resources assigned to this task. So you can start making, getting the information in a manner which makes more sense to you. But like if I just wanted to replicate my task list, I can just start drag and dropping the columns that I need. So I need the ID, I need the name, I need the um, maybe plan, start and finish. Right now it's showing me a breakdown of my date, so I can change it just to raw date instead of a breakdown of year, month, and this is my plan start and finish and so on. So there's multiple levels of reporting that you can do with these kind of visuals. So this is simple drag drop of um, column data into a visual. I can aggregate data. I can start creating some measures like calculated properties and show that to say which example, which task is on time or early based on today's date and the planned start date. So we can do those kind of calculations directly in Power BI as well. Any questions so far? All right. So this can be overwhelming for new users. So I do have in the wiki um, on how to use the connector and what kind of relationships to make. So if you're working with, so in this section table relationships, if you're working with, um, let's say task and resource, these are the relationships you will need to create. If you're working with, let's say user field relationship, that's another thing I would like to show here. Because but yeah, you can use this as a reference to make your own tables. So let's take user fields. Right now in my first iteration, I did not download the user field tables. So I'm going to get back to my get data more. Give it a second to load. I'll need to copy my project URL as well. There we go. Synchro, body, connect, copy the project ID. Okay, this time I'm going to do user field and then I'm going to get, let's say resource. I need something to tell me which user fields are part of which resource. So resource user field value. That should be enough. Okay, so let's try this. So now I loaded those two additional tables. Some time to download that data. User field is probably the most heaviest data. So whenever you work with user field, expect some time to download that data. But user fields give you the power to literally extract any sort of information from 40 Pro. Because I mentioned earlier on, there are some data like cost and baseline data that is not immediately available with the directly connector. But if you create a user field with that kind of information, like let's say you wanted budget direct cost, I can just within 40 Pro create a user field with that information, and then you will have that value available as a user field. So let's say I have now a list of resource IDs, and I want to see what are the user field properties for that. So let's go to our table view and see the user field is the name, the GUID, and the type of user field. So this table user field table is all it's giving me is a name, but the resource user field value tells me the user field GUID, and through the other table I know what the name is and what the value of that is. So we'll have to again create new relationships here. So I'm going to create a new layout and I'm going to create a relationship between resource user field, and resource. So sometimes Power BI tries to create these tables automatically. It did a decent job of this, but I don't like that. Sometimes it can really mess things up. So I recommend creating these tables manually. So, but this time it resource GUID went to the GUID for the resource table. That's good. And similarly, user field GUID, I want the GUID from user field. Now this relationship created between the resource, user field, uh, the value and the user field itself. So now let's see if I wanted to uh, name from the user field table and value from my resource to user field table. So if I select one of the table here, one of the resources, you can see these are all my user field assigned to it. The ID, model, code. If they were, okay, this one has more properties here, like path name. So if you had any of your physical properties or identity properties, anything will show up using this, right? So from from this point on, like if you have been doing physical properties and calculations and things like that, you can also start doing that in Power BI itself, because I can now select an element. Let's say why doesn't any, okay, this one. This one has all of these resources assigned, and all of the resources have, value assigned to it, like a volume or surface area or something. So I can start aggregating that information and get my physical quantities on a schedule level and vice versa. Again, this can become pretty complex, and that's why we have all of that wiki available to create all of these relationships. But to make things even more easier, we do provide a template that you can get started with easily and then customize it for your own requirements. Um, First thing, this is telling us setting a template. How can I, once I've made these relationships ourselves and I have a specific report going on, um, how can I reuse this report for multiple projects? So that's what that section was about. But before that, let me show you how to work with some of the templates that we have available. So under this section, I have the Power BI templates available. This is just one PBIX file, which has multiple sheets to it. The sheets that are available is for Gantt. So I have a Gantt sheet, which shows some project summary on the left, like data date, start date, plan dates, project complete, a date filter field, and a work breakdown structure, the same leaf level breakdown on the as a Gantt, some um, KPIs like total tasks or how many tasks are pending, in progress, finish, and so on. So this is one sheet. This is a Gantt view, and if I click on task list, I can go here and this just shows me a task list with some additional visuals showing percentage completes, finished progress in a color mode, and critical, and so on. So the other sheet we have is for AV analysis. We know how limited some of the AVA capabilities and graphs are within 40 Pro. So this helps you expand that information into this form. We have a sheet for resource status. So if you're aware of statusing, you can add field statuses to each resource, and you can then, based on the category, like this one is for steel, this is for concrete, you can start, getting that information here. And lastly, we have a sheet for planned quantities on how much quantity for a select uh, property or entity, how much quantities you need at what period of time. So when you download this template file, you get this. So at the bottom, you'll have the Gantt, earned value, resource status, and plant quantity. And this is connected to one of my demo projects. So you'll have this data to see how this is behaving. Like you can download this, come here and check your work breakdown structure. If I just want to see my northbound bridge, I can click on that. It will filter all of my tables for that. If I want to get information on a specific date range, I can filter using this. Um, these are smart click buttons, so I can click on critical task and it will filter my list with critical tasks. I want to see all my planned tasks, I can see that. The same thing if I click on Gantt view. Some of these buttons I have to do a control click because this is still in an edit kind of mode, but you can see, in a Gantt view, all of my planned tasks and so on. If you want to go to a different sheet, you can go from the top here or you can go from the bottom. And this is my earned value sheet. Again, all of this information is coming through um, user fields. So because we don't directly support budget costs, actual costs. So that's why we have instructions here to see. Um, so prerequisites, you'll have to run these scripts. If you're not familiar with scripts, we have enough information online, but there's screenshots here as well. So you can go and run these scripts to populate data date, budget cost, actual cost, and critical, so that those information are available as a user field, and then all of your um, graphs are gonna populate it. If you don't use all of these are available, then some of the other graphs may not work or will just show blank values. So that's one of the prerequisites of getting this working. Again, there's a another prerequisite for resource statuses, that you assign a not started status to all the elements belonging to a specific category. That helps us to filter our tables out. And then there are some instructions which I'll keep on adding to this on how to edit a template. And but before that, once you download the template, the first thing you're gonna do is populate it with your own project data, right? So like I was saying earlier on, we can convert this into a template using parameters. So this one again is already set up. So if you look at the relationships that I have created over here, so all tables, this can become really complex, and the number of tables I have created some custom tables, and a lot of customizations are done in order to support these kind of tables, which are not necessarily obvious to newish or novice users. That's why the templates are there. So I won't really worry about playing around with this too much unless you are proficient with it, but you can see how complex those relationships can get. Um, but yeah, so to convert this into a template, we have this parameter setup. So I can click on edit parameter. Right now, cost code is not supported, but that's something coming up soon enough. But I can change my project ID to any other project, and if that project has all of the other prerequisites for data date, critical task, and all that, it will just update all your existing visuals with that project data. So it makes it easier for you to reuse it for multiple projects. So yeah, so you can see how this is this is again a very interactive sheet. I can go down to a specific timeline and see this is taking some time to update all my values. Some of the values for um, EVA might not be 100% one-to-one with 40 Pro. There may be discrepancies, and if there is something wildly inaccurate, you can always reach out to support. And we can see what's happening. It's just because the data calculation, all of this calculations is being done in Power BI, which may not account for the same level of uh, time finesse as 40 Pro. They might, but there are other um, what do you call it? Assumptions where I'm not really working with the calendar data. It's just a linear day by day thing. So there's no uh, um, work hours or time of hours being accounted for. It's getting most of the data directly from 40 Pro, the calendar durations, all of that. But again, the time is more of a linear curve in that sense. But yeah, I would encourage you to play around with your own data and see how the values are coming out. So a lot of data here may be redundant for your use case. We can like uh, CV, SPI, CPIs. There might be some additional values provided here, but you can pick and choose what you need, or you can use this as a starting ground to create your own reports. Some of the customizations you would need to do is, for example, in your resource status. So in this sheet, each visual has a filter setup. So if I click on this visual, the filter that setup is the status set name is steel. And for this concrete one, the status set name is concrete, right? So you can come here and change based on your requirements. You can come and click on your specific status set to filter that data out. So my concrete is showing cure form poured, steel is showing driven, welded, installed. And so the same thing applies for all of these filters within a section. This one is I'm I'm using a plan quantity called by length as from a user field. So you can come here and search for a specific user field for that specific category. So it could be your surface, volume, weight, whatever user field you want to use. You can come and select that one, and that's what the data is going to be displayed. So again, all these instructions and screenshots are provided on the wiki, but just to give you kind of heads up, there is some level of customization required for this. Same thing applies for the plan quantity here. Um, if I click on this, this is uh, using a daily physical quantity. Um, I guess that is coming directly from 40 Pro. But yeah, um, any questions? I'm kind of towards the end of my presentation, but this is all right. I do see a question over here. I've seen an iTwin extension for bringing the 3D view to Power BI. Have you tested it and is it available to download? At the moment, I have to bring images every week to the dashboard. So um, there is a visual that lets you read an iModel 3D model in Power BI. That's not available through the Synchro platform. It's available within the Connect platform. So if you have access to Connect, we can get you connected with the right dev team to get access to it. But what it does is, yeah, once you load uh, the relevant iModel URL or information, it can let you navigate through the iModel itself, but it will not contain any 4D information. So there's not going to be construction simulation available. We just do not have that visual available. But at least with 3D, we can bring in that 3D iModel here, and we can use the iModel's EC instance ID, so the unique identifier for each of those elements, and connect it with the IDs from a 4D Pro, so that when you select an element, let's say I select my parasteel, that 3D view will show you the filtered view of all your 3D model piles connected to that task. So I don't have a template set up for that just because of the limitation that not every Synchro user is going to have access to the Connect platform, and that's additional licensing and whatnot. But Alexandra, if you are interested into pursuing that, reach out to your account manager, let them connect with me, and we can set up a demo or use case and figure out what all access you would need to get that and demonstrate what all is possible. But one thing for sure, we will not have any 4D simulation viewer in Power BI anytime soon. Right? Any other questions? So what's coming next is I kind of hinted on that. So I'll be mostly working on, so providing some of these templates. So if you have any recommendation or would like to, see some sort of KPI metrics, visuals or something, feel free to reach out to me or this group, and I'll see if I can provide that as a template or not. Or we do have for all the um, E365 users over here, we do have blueprints uh, that you can utilize to use us as a resource to customize these visuals or create visuals for you. So we can have separate discussions with your account manager on using those Power BI blueprints. But what I've been working on next is so Synchro Modeler. If you have been exposed to that yet, excels at working with pay items or cost codes. And this 4D Pro, even though this does not really directly connect with the Synchro Modeler, that Synchro Modeler information does show up to a degree in 4D Pro. So if I go to my 4D Pro project and select an element, once you assign a cost code to that element, that shows up as a as a user field. Um, let's see if I have an example. Yeah, this one. So what it shows up is the cost code or pay item that's assigned to the element and the value based on the formula that you use. So that information does show up as a user field, which can be extracted into my Power BI template. So, and that was visible immediately here. When I select a element here, you could see, well, those user fields there. So what with that kind of information, I can start doing some aggregations again, like to show at which task level, what is the total physical quantity based of the cost code, um, and those relationships. So that's gonna be my next template. And but yeah, I'm open to feedback on uh, what you would like to see next in terms of any Power BI integrations or um, templates or visuals you'd like to see in the future. But yeah, technically that's all I had to show you guys, but it's the floor is all open for any questions, feedback, comments, anything.